What's up everyone, Kriddle here, and I want to do a quick overview on weapons in Baldur's Gate 3. The game doesn't do an extremely good job of explaining what the different types of weapons do and how to look at them and all the different intricacies of them. So I want to do a quick overview on how some of them work. So the first thing I want to take a look at is how to inspect a weapon. If you just hover over any item in the game, you can actually hit T. I know it says right up here at the top T to inspect, but it still took me a long time to realize it. So some other people might be having the same issue. So if you hit T, you can then move your mouse around and you can hover over different aspects of the item. So we can go here and say, okay, well, what abilities does this particular weapon give me? In this case, it's a dagger, and it's going to give me the piercing strike ability. If you equip an item, it also shows you those down here on your bar. So you'll, I equip my short sword here, and it allows me to do flourish or piercing strike. So that's basically what that will allow you to do. You can also come down here, and you can't really hover over dagger. This just tells you, the first thing down here tells you the type of weapon that it is. Certain types of weapons are required to do certain things in D&D. For example, you have to have a club or a quarterstaff in your hand to be able to cast the druid spell Shillelagh and create a slightly better weapon, because clubs usually do 1d6, but the Shillelagh is going to end up doing 1d8. So it's actually better to have a club in your hand, cast Shillelagh, use it, and it also makes it magic, which we'll go over what magic versus non-magic means here in a minute. Next thing you can do, you hover over these different things down here at the bottom. So we have the light modifier. Light basically means that you can dual wield the weapon. So you can hold one light weapon in both hands, or in either hand at the same time. So you cannot have a normal weapon like a long sword in your main hand and then have another long sword or even a light weapon in your offhand. You can't do that. However, if you have two light weapons, you can innately do that. There are feats that allow you to hold two long swords or a long sword and then a light weapon in your offhand. There are feats that allow you to do that, and certain classes are able to do that. But for the most part, this is how that works. In addition to that, if you do have two light weapons in your hand, you can take a main action with your main hand, and then you can do a bonus action with your offhand. So it's a way to get an additional attack each round at an early state in the game. And another thing that you can do is with the hand crossbow, it is considered a light weapon, and you can dual wield two crossbows. They do slightly less damage than, say, a light crossbow or a heavy crossbow at 1d6 rather than a 1d8 for a light crossbow. But you can dual wield them, meaning that you get two attacks per round rather than one. So that's very nice to have. Now, your offhand weapons usually do not add in your bonus damage from your strength and your dexterity and things. So just factor that in. Your offhand weapon will basically just be the base damage of the weapon. The next thing we're going to look at here is finesse. Finesse means that it can use your strength modifier or your dexterity modifier for both your attack roll and your damaging rolls. So if you were to go right over here and I hover over strength, you can see that I have a +0 in strength, but I have a +2 in dex, meaning that I want to use dexterity weapons in this game or finesse weapons in this game. And that's going to give me +2 damage and +2 to my hits every single time that I use it. So most weapons in the game, if they are range weapons, will be dexterity based, and most melee weapons will be strength based, but in the case of finesse weapons, they can be either one. So that's basically what that means. This last one down here says thrown. What that means is that you can actually throw the weapon with its weapon damage. So I could go over here, I could right click on it, and I can say throw weapon. The difference in throw weapon versus something like this right here, which doesn't have thrown, you can still right click on it and throw this weapon, but it is not considered to be thrown as a weapon. So what it'll do is it'll actually throw it and do just a base damage of 2 if it hits something. So it still does damage, just not nearly as much. Whereas this will do 1d4 +2 if you use it as a thrown weapon, because 1, I'm proficient in it, and 2, it is considered a thrown weapon. Same thing with like a hand axe or a javelin and those kind of things. Another modifier that we can look at here is going to be extra reach. So extra reach means that you can reach something that is more than melee distance away from you. So melee distance in this game is considered to be about 5 feet, or I guess in the case of this, about 2 meters, because I think everything in this game is based on metric. So it would be, this would extend that and double that range, so you can actually reach over something, like say there's an NPC between you or another character between you and the enemy, you can reach over that enemy and hit them. So it has increased range and can be used to attack from farther away. So that's basically what that means. And then we have things like, let's see if I can find one here real quick. Where is it? Versatile. There we go. So the quarterstaff, that's a versatile weapon, which means that it can be used with 1 or 2 hands. It does slightly more damage if you use it with 2 hands, but then obviously you don't have that offhand weapon or shield or whatever to use with it. So in this case, a quarterstaff will do 1d8 damage if it's used with 2 hands, and we do 1d6 damage if it is used with 1 hand. You can also use things like salami for a weapon if you wanted to. It's only going to do a base of 1d4. It's not going to add anything to it. So like you're not going to get your strength modifier, dexterity modifier, anything like that. It's just kind of an improvised weapon, but you can do that if you want to. And that's kind of the same thing down here is improvised melee weapons kind of works the same way. So now the next thing that we want to talk about is the different types of damage. We have, the magic damage. You have some weapons that are silver, things like that. And that's going to go along with your things like piercing, slashing, and bludgeoning types of damage. So as you can see here, we have a short sword. A short sword is not considered a slashing weapon, even though you would think it's a sword, you're going to slash with it. It is actually considered a piercing weapon. So when you're looking at different types of weapons, double check and make sure that you know what kind of damage it's going to deal, because certain enemies in the game will be resistant, immune, or vulnerable to different types of weapons. So specifically for melee characters, a lot of the magic characters don't have to worry about this too much, but later on in the game, you may be fighting something that is immune or resistant to magical weapon or to non-magical weapons. So if your character is, say, using a Morning Star here, and that Morning Star again is going to be doing piercing damage, it's not a bludgeoning weapon, although it does do that 1 bludgeoning damage on it, if you still miss, whatever, but it'll do non-magical damage. So if, let's say, I'm fighting something like an elemental, it will take half damage from that weapon. So I want to put on this short sword right here, which has a +1 enchantment. That +1 enchantment, if you hit T, you can hover over it to see exactly what it does. It does add 1 to your attack roll and 1 to your damage, so it is slightly better. But as you can see on a Morning Star, it does 1d8 damage versus a short sword, which does 1d6 damage. So you still want to use the magical short sword, especially when you're fighting something that might be immune or resistant to non-magical weapons. The other thing is going to be piercing, slashing versus bludgeoning. Certain enemies in this game are resistant or immune or vulnerable to certain types of damage. Skeletons, for example, are vulnerable to bludgeoning damage, so they will take double damage when you hit them with a bludgeoning weapon, which would be something like a quarterstaff or a club, or a hammer. Those kind of things are all bludgeoning. And then certain things might be immune to bludgeoning damage. It just all depends. If you want to know what a character is resistant or immune to or whatever, you can say, for example, I want to attack Shadowheart here. I can right click on her and I can say examine, and right here under resistances it'll tell you what they are resistant to and different types of conditions that they have. So under here it will also tell you if they are vulnerable to a certain type of weapon as well. So I think that goes over everything in the game as far as weapons are concerned. Hopefully I covered everything. If you find this video useful, please like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. Check me out over on Twitch, where I do stream almost daily, and hopefully I will see you next time. Bye!